So as we have understood bit about the web services and then what are the RESTful web services and how can you create the web services, it's time to understand that what are the frameworks which is being used to create the web services. One of the very known specifications for creating the RESTful web services in Java open source what is called as the JAX-RS specifications or the JAX-RS API. And uh, two of the most known frameworks which is used for creating a RESTful web services is Jersey and second is a Spring Boot. We are going to use a Spring Boot, but we need to get the idea of what is Jersey, because everything in terms of the RESTful web services is being driven with the help of the Jersey API. There is also a Jackson API. Jackson is basically a very well known API which does marshalling and unmarshalling, which essentially mean that whenever you are sending the JSON data, it needs to be converted into Java object, and when you are sending the Java object over the HTTP, it needs to be converted into JSON. So let's try to understand the Jersey part first. So if we'll just go to the Google and then we'll type into the Jersey, you'll get up the getting started guide over here. And then this talks about how you can actually use the Jersey into your project. So Jersey is more like the annotation base where you can define up the annotation of @path, @get, and it produces something like text plain, or it produces of the JSON, and uh, you can annotate your method so that whenever someone would be calling onto the path slash my resource with an HTTP get method, this function will automatically gets executed. You can also annotate your method with the @post or @delete also. And this one is a small setup which is required, which helps us out uh, to spawn the Tomcat servers or the Jetty server, or it can be a Glassfish server, and basically deploy your resource so that it is accessible over the HTTP, because normal Java project will not be able to expose the resource as an HTTP. uh, and then you can run the test, so you can actually spend some time on calling up these web services and creating up these web services. If you'll go to the Google and just type in the Jackson API, you'll basically get this page, which is the API, a small API which allows the XML and the JSON marshalling and unmarshalling operations. So now it's time to move to the world called as a Spring Boot. Spring Boot is very famous in terms of creating up the RESTful web services. So basically that's nothing but the Spring Boot RESTful web services. It allows an embedded Tomcat and the Jetty server into your Java application. So you just concentrate on to the writing down the Java programs, but do not worry about how the server will get started and all other important things like how your project will be deployed, so that your class will be exposed as a RESTful endpoints and all those details. We'll just concentrate on to the writing down the annotation space, Java methods or the Java classes. It provides a simple dependencies to be included in the form.xml file. At the same time, it provides production ready features like metrics and the health checks and the external configuration. So to understand more into the detail, let's try to make a quick look at the Spring Boot. If you go to the Google and just type in the Spring Boot, you'll get the understanding of what this is about. So if you'll see over here, it has a very important annotations called as a controller annotation. It has a response body if you're sending up text data over here, and then it has a request mapping over here. So onto your project, when you say slash, it will just call this method, which is basically your home method. And to start your class to be exposed as a RESTful endpoint, you'll just say that spring application dot run, simple controller.class and the arguments which you are passing in on. You need to have these annotations like enable configurations, auto configuration annotations to be enabled, and then you are good to create your first project with the Spring based project, and you can actually check in over there that how these resources are being mapped to these methods and all those. We are going to write down the program for that, how we can do that. But let's quickly understand what is there as a Spring Boot dependencies which needs to be added. So to make a project to work as a Spring Boot, we'll be creating up a simple Java project, which is basically a Maven based Java project, which would be having a parent tag which is defined, and it will be having up the dependencies also which is defined. These materials will be accessible to the link over there. At the same time, this material is also accessible to the link which has been displayed previously over here, which is basically this parent and the dependencies. Once you have these, all the annotations and the other required things would be accessible to you. We'll look into the more details into the next lecture.